All right, folks, let's kick things off. If I can ask the rest of you to turn those cameras back on, and we will begin. Fantastic. If anybody has any trouble with their video, with their audio, or of course, their connection, we do have a technician on the line the entire time. But happy Friday, and welcome to this Meet the Boss virtual roundtable. My name's Kristina Cartwright. Happy to be with all of you guys, and this session brought to you by Evotech and NetApp. And again, 90 minutes is not easy to carve out. So I appreciate you guys being here for a valuable experience that we're all about to have. And just like that, we made it to 2021 after a tumultuous year. While the pandemic really caused massive disruption, it also really forced us to find new ways to live, to work, and to communicate. And no one really could predict where 2020 would take us. According to Forbes, just want to share this quick stat with you. The last 6 months alone have produced more digital transformation than the last decade. So looking ahead, it's really unclear where this next year will take us and how organizations can plan for the longer term when a lot of us don't know what's going to happen next week or next month. However, I think one thing is certain: resilience will continue to be a defining theme, guiding enterprises on really how they shift resources, roles, and the way they digitally transform. So excited to hear about how you guys are transforming, the challenges you're facing, and we're obviously talking about an important subject here, and that is modernized data engineering for AI and data analytics. So that's just a little bit from me. Want to share some housekeeping rules before we dive into some introductions. First things first, this is a closed door roundtable discussion that is not publicly broadcast anywhere, but we do record it for internal purposes only. Second thing is, I want this to be an interactive discussion. While I have a bunch of questions I'll be asking all of you, don't worry, I'll be going to every single one of you, getting you to respond. If you'd like to jump in a little earlier or want to add your own thoughts or feedback, feel free to message me, raise your hand, turn your mic on. Let's make this an organic conversation. It's a Friday. But lastly, we want to make sure this discussion is practical. So if everyone can please frame their answers based on experience at their current or past organizations. All right, everyone sees that slide in front of you, correct? Great. That's what we're talking about today. And again, we thank the folks over at Evotech and NetApp for bringing us all together to have this discussion. Again, my name's Kristina Cartwright, calling in remotely from my home. If you can't tell with this large purple banner behind me, I'm here in Westchester County, New York, where it is a whopping, I think, 12 degrees outside. I'm your host. I'm also a senior content creator over with Meet the Boss. Excited to spend my 90 minutes with all of you this afternoon, but would love to hear a little bit more from you guys. When I come to your slide, give us a little bit more information about what you do at your company and where you're calling in from. Matt, we'll kick off with you first.
Well, I think I have you beat on 12 degrees, but maybe not. My name is Matt Wells. Oh, 18 degrees, so maybe not. My name is Matt Wells, and I'm with Experian, one of the big three credit bureaus. Here I'm working out of my palatial estate in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I manage the enterprise data lake at Experian. So we're making virtual copies of all of our enterprise systems, and then using Tableau and other tools to do analytics, AI, and reporting against those virtual copies.
Fantastic. Well, we're excited to have you here, Matt. And you don't have me beat just yet, but not too far off. It's still really cold, no matter where we are. But thanks for being here. Let's move on to our next attendee. We have Wei here from Human Longevity. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Thanks, Kristina. Yeah, I'm at the Bay Area. So right now it's 52 outside, and the sun just came out. So should be a good Friday. Yeah. So I'm not sure how many of you have heard about Human Longevity. It's a company originally founded by Craig Venter, who sequenced the first human whole genome. So when a client comes to our clinic, we collect 150 gigabytes of data, and we use our data analytic tools to make sense out of this 150 gigabytes of data. The goal is to tell you how healthy you are and provide, well, help our physicians to provide personalized interventions. So that's what we do. We want to help people, live healthier and longer. I think, because of this COVID, people, become more a- aware of this, how important health is, right? So
Or
thank you, Kristina. Yeah.
yeah, well, thanks for being here. Glad you guys are trying to make people live healthier and longer. Very important. Ramendra is also here from Teradata. Tell us a little bit more about your role.
Yeah, hi. I'm Ramendra Sahoo. I also live in Westchester. I'm saying the 12 degree. It's very cold here and slightly partly sunny. And yes, I work for Teradata. I'm a director of data science and principal data scientist here. And I joined about roughly 1.5 years ago. Teradata. And yes, in terms of transformation, we are also going through a number of big transformations. Particularly, our company is cloud first right now, and we are providing cloud analytic platforms enablers. That means we work with all the big public cloud providers like Google, AWS, and Microsoft Azure. And from my group standpoint, I have two different roles. One is about client facing the cloud solutions, particularly related to transformations. And the other part is mostly about data science. That means we have a number of software and applications software coming up or are there in the data warehousing space. I kind of lead that group in terms of testing, in terms of making sure the product roadmap, some of the things are aligned to the client needs. I'll pause here. So happy to be here discussing this current topic.
Fantastic. It's nice to have a neighbor on the call. Stay warm, Ramendra. But interested to hear more about, your cloud first strategy. Let's go on over to Praveen from Mars. Welcome to the roundtable. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Hey, Kristina, thanks a lot for that. Happy Friday, guys. It's great to be part of this roundtable. My name is Praveen Motiru, Vice President of Mars Digital and Chief Enterprise Architect. Mostly what we work with on the AI platforms, the data platforms, and we really get a lot of stones thrown at us to say what we did and what we didn't do. So it'll be a good conversation. Looking forward to it to understand how you guys are dealing with these challenges and what are we doing to drive these solutions better.
You hit the nail on the head there. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I know he just dropped off, but should be back soon. We do also have Dave Withers joining us shortly from PIMCO. And he's the Vice President over at Data Architecture there. So hopefully he'll be back shortly. But it's my pleasure to introduce Seth here as well. Seth, tell us a little bit more about you and your company.
Yes, so I am the CEO of a AI company. We kind of function as part platform, part consultancy in this era, because everyone who is doing AI work is essentially kind of doing it for the first time, I think. Even if it's only been at it for 5 years, we're all getting back into it, so to speak. So it seems to come with data management challenges, which is why I'm here as well, is that you end up with AI challenges and data management challenges. And I think there's a lot of excitement on the part of both, because, from a data perspective, you're like, wow, we've got these data lakes. We've got to figure out how to get great value from that training data. Because you feel like, look, we have the training data, that's where the value is. And then I think on the other end, it's like, well, how do you build algorithms that work with that and that make sense out of it? And we've noticed a lot of problems with our customers continually around model management, like how is this exactly done, and AI pipelines, and especially, and I think I'll get a chance to talk to this a little bit today, we see a lot of challenges around, hey, how exactly are we supposed to do this, in terms of the pipeline stance, once you start writing your own custom code and you have some amount of cloud involvement, you're like, look, how do I connect all these things together? And there seems to always be a sense of like, is this supposed to be custom? Am I supposed to be doing this custom? Are we supposed to be writing our own code? Just be leveraging other people's technology? How do we do this moving forward? And so that kind of uncertainty is always there. And so I'm hoping that today, as we all talk this through, we should see everyone have a certain amount of uncertainty and, the confidence to talk about it as a group.
Fantastic. Well, Seth, you're a great addition to this roundtable. I'm sure you're going to provide us a ton of insight. Also providing insight today is Ned from Evotech. Tell us a little bit more about you and your company.
Hi, Ned Engelke here, Evotech. I'm based in San Diego, where it is 54 degrees. I feel like it's a life-threatening chill. I know the other Californians will probably agree with me that this is unacceptable. Evotech is a company that focuses on working with our customers as they go through the life cycle of buzzwords that you mentioned at the beginning, Kristina, from through the digital transformation towards using data science and other things. But we work with customers who are across really every stage of maturity, from people who are trying to figure out how to turn on a PC all the way through to the most advanced data science workloads. And we've seen a lot of commonality at every stage along the way. A lot of commonality of challenges around dealing with the data, dealing with the data management, and dealing with another buzzword that you mentioned, Kristina, which was the resiliency of the overall environment. So this is a fascinating topic, and looking forward to digging in. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we thank Evotech for joining us. NetApp's also here. Host Seb, welcome to the session. Tell us why you wanted to be here and a little bit about you.
I was on mute. Thank you, and appreciate you guys joining. I'm based out of Denver, so if you want to talk about weather, you can experience 3 seasons in one day. And I've been with NetApp for almost 6+ years now. I'm the head of AI and analytics here at NetApp globally. I've been 6+ years, as I said. I changed a couple of locations geographically as well. So I went to Middle East and Europe, and now in the States. And I'm really happy here to, I read your comments, and I've seen a lot of challenges that we can probably help as NetApp because of the experience we bring in terms of the data management capabilities across the hybrid clouds, on premises, and all of that. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Let's get it started.
Let's get it started. Great. Thanks, Jose. While data may be your most important asset, many organizations are struggling with vast amounts of it, scattered and distributed across several platforms and stores. And multiple data sources create complexities for data engineers tapping into data living in these formats and file systems. And traditional data centers, well, they can also carry enormous technical debt. Innovation and automation must be at the heart of a next generation data center. Managing the data end to end from edge to core to cloud eliminates the challenges of better training the models with more data and better deploying the AI models whenever and wherever needed. So how can you modernize your data architecture and improve model management? That's what we're going to be discussing, as well as the challenges you guys are facing and modernized data engineering for AI and data analytics. So what I'd like to do is read off that first question, go around the group, hear from everyone. I'll also post that question in the chat for anyone that misses it. So Matt, I'm going to start with you first. How are you managing data end to end from edge to core? And are you moving your data or workloads more to the cloud? Where are you in that journey? Whenever you're ready.
So 3 years ago, I was working as a consultant, and a buddy who lives literally down the street from me called me and said, "Hey, we bought a data lake and we don't know what to do with it." And he was familiar with my work at my previous stop at Thomson Reuters, where I had managed the basically how do we want to manage our data warehouse. So I came over and started working a few hours a week, and then a few more hours a week, and then a few more hours a week on helping them understand how they could leverage a centralized data lake, a data storage area, to basically get out of the business of doing things custom in every region and every business unit. And so we have all of the technology challenges that you just described and that everybody has been talking about, but we have even more of a culture challenge where North America does things this way, Asia Pacific does this way, the decision analytics business does things this way, and how do we build a common data set and a common data infrastructure so that if you change jobs within Experian, you're still doing things the same way, and we don't have to train you on a whole new way of looking at financial data, at looking at sales data. We've gone from 35 different instances of Salesforce.com down to 6. I think the reasonable number is actually 5, so we're getting pretty close. We still have every single business intelligence tool sold, and many of which have been deprecated, out there doing our financial reporting. But we are starting to make progress on getting everybody to sort of sing from the same hymnal and do things the same way, and less kind of bespoke stuff. It's hard. How I put it to my constituents is we want to spend more time talking about what the data means and less time talking about where we got the data from. And if we can get to that point, then we can have the meaningful discussions about how to use AI to inform ourselves, how to use the advanced analytics capabilities that are out there in order to learn from each other and learn from the data. We're not there yet.
You brought up a lot of big, comments there. I like how you brought up the culture challenge. I hear that time and time again on these roundtables, and just kind of getting everyone on the same page. Ramendra, interested to come to you next, since you guys said you're cloud first. So, how are you managing data end to end from edge to core, and anything that Matt brought up, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, certainly. So as I mentioned, that cloud first. So one of, the Teradata, probably you know or don't know that it is more in the basic data preparation space. It used to be a hardware company, and it is the data warehousing is its like primary, the bread and butter. That means our focus has been the data integration, data preparation, and so certainly like 4 or 5 years back, Teradata became more of a software company. That means it started working into the analytics, machine learning, AI part of it. And our flagship product is Vantage. Vantage is an analytics platform. It has modules to support. We call it like analytics 1, 2, 3. That means data preparation, modeling, and deployment. That means each component has we have our adapters or layers of software to enable the cloud. Data preparation makes sure that if you have multiple sources of data sets, how to check the data and data anomalies and data quality, as well as integrating the data sets right itself there, so that you can also do a lot of analytics there. And that means, suppose you are using some other adapters or somewhere you are doing some analytics, you don't have to move the data sets. You be there, so that we use massively parallel processing, more or less like a MapReduce concept done with the in database. That is how which is our core expertise. Same thing about the in the cloud part, that is the deployment side of it. What we are doing the transformation wise, yes, the cloud public cloud companies, they provide the cloud like enablers, but what we provide is basically making sure that similar approach, so that you make the preparation of the data for the cloud much faster and taking to the analytics much faster, and you are not putting the data in transit or making so that you are not losing almost like 70 to 80% of the time, which is like which is a Gartner report which came up, that people spend more time in preparing the data itself than doing the analytics itself. So that's what we have been doing, and we are focusing it more in 2021 right now.
No, thanks for sharing that. Hoseb, I saw you turned your mic on. Did you want to add something?
Oh, no, keep going. Yeah.
No. Oh, all right, great.
Well, but, I want to listen first from the people. Yeah.
And Ramendra, interesting to hear about the data preparedness. Thank you for sharing that. Wait, let's come on over to you. Interested, are you moving your data workloads to the cloud? Where are you in your journey, and what does your roadmap look like for this year?
So we are provider, like we are not like a company like application company or something, like we enable our clients to do that. So Teradata has its system in many of the massive scale like companies starting in almost all sectors. So our data is our platform is there for years. One of the first enterprise level data warehousing. And recently Gartner has named us as a cloud leader in this space. Because you asked this question, like we provide like focusing on the cloud enabler part right now. Say net object stores, read write capabilities. That's what is our like one of the offerings coming up in 2021. We are providing analytics libraries so that on the fly you can access and do
Wow.
clustering segmentation within the database itself. You don't have to move the data to your client platform to do certain things like this. So I'm giving some examples. We also provide query grade. That means communication, so that you minimize the bandwidth, so that bandwidth communication in terms of communication so apart from the computation done in the database itself. So these are some of the capabilities we provide. We are also working on a number of partners. Say, for example, deep learning and H2A, H2O, and some of the other companies. We are also enabling those things as our through our partnership.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ramendra. Wei, let's go on over to you next.
Thank you. So we are more in the healthcare industry, and you guys know how messy the data is, or how heterogeneous the data is. When it comes to medical records, right? So right now, we aggregate a huge amount of data, including like multi-omics data, like whole your genome, your metabolome, proteomics data, and then we do whole body imaging, which means we have a lot of imaging data. In the meantime, we also have so-called phenotypical data, your blood work, your bone density, so far we haven't found a commercial platform that can aggregate all these data together. So which means we have to come up something by ourselves. So right now, so we have a clinic. Well, we have a few clinics in different cities. Our physicians get used to the traditional EMR system, or electronic medical record system, right? So we use the EMR system, next gen, all scripts for the clinic operation, which means our physicians will, like say, prescribe certain medications to our patients using the EMR system. In the meantime, the service providers such as LabCorp, will provide APIs to deposit their data into our EMR system, right? So that's just the component for clinical operation. That's just the first step. The second step, we have to analyze all the data that we collect from different sources, right? Which means we need to export the data out, out of this EMR system, and put into a data warehouse, and analyze them, provide some insights. So we use we have our own pipeline to do the analytics. I agree with Matt. When it comes to medical records, there is always cultural issue and a legal issue, right? We have to protect the privacy of our patients, medical records. In the meantime, each government has their own regulations. So, for example, you cannot, share your genome data with, certain countries, right? Same thing for other countries as well. Which means, how can you come up with a system that can be, because we have clinics all over the world, right? Not just in the United States, in Asia, very soon will be in Europe. So how can you come up with a platform that comply to the regulations in different countries, and also generate or provide similar insights to clients all over the world? That's a very big challenge for us. Yeah.
This is a big challenge when going to cloud as well, because you have to abide by these regulations and keep your patient's privacy top of mind, correct?
Correct. Exactly. Yeah, it's a big challenge for us. We're still working on that.
Yeah. Praveen, let's do the conversation now and hear a little bit more. Are you moving your data or workloads to the cloud? Where are you in your journey, Praveen?
Sure, Kristina. I think you brought up a very good question, first of all, right? So I think the governance and privacy is very critical. See, I think we took a cloud-first approach for past 4 or 5 years at Mars, and the guiding principle is every data should be in the data lake, whether it's good, bad, ugly. And we won't say we have good data, but whatever data we have should be in data lake. So that's the guiding principle number one, because that will democratize the availability of data rather than strangled in the siloed solutions and limited out of the box or off the shelf applications, right? We don't like that. So we'll pull all the data, we put it in the data lake, and we have run a lot of successful AI projects where things are really good. The one question I would like to bring is what we are struggling right now, and I asked this question to my chief digital officer also, and we brainstorm it on a continuous basis, and we don't have an answer, and we want to see how the rest of the teams here respond. See, once we put the data in the data lake, everybody is coming and asking a small piece of data. They get the data, they do analytics, and they do the projects, and everybody is successful. But the problem is we are not able to understand our catalog to lay out a taxonomy of, hey, this is our data model, enterprise data model, and these are the data services we are available, or these are the data models that are available. These are the AI projects already available. And the next person who comes and does the project at least needs to understand what the previous guy has done. And there's so much of test and learns. Not every AI project, it's like finding the needle in the haystack, right? Not every AI project is going into production. Some tests have been there, some models have been done at some work, and then they left it somewhere. And all that cost is becoming like overhead for us, right? Not only in terms of managing the data, but also getting the value of the data. So we are looking for an enterprise taxonomy or ontology kind of where we can map, hey, this is about our pet's life or pet's care or pet value, pet life, pet medications, versus this is more about DNA, this is more about the food. We were not able to put that map together. And I think that is what is the information architecture, and that's what is really important, because we can do a lot of drumbeat about bringing the data, doing AI, but that has become table stakes right now. Like nobody is challenged to bring the data from a pipelines. Nobody is challenged to get a new model with a Python and put a notebook out there. That is where we are struggling as an enterprise. At least from my desk, I'm seeing that I'm not having that visibility to go through a structured process, and that is coming back, Kristina, to your point of how is governance done, how is compliance ensured, how is auditability compliant, how are we truly making data as a value asset and managing it appropriately with citizenship, right? So that is the gap, and I would love to hear from the rest of the people when it's the right time.
I'm reading facial reactions though on this call, and I see Joseb was nodding a ton. So I'd love for you to kind of chime in. And visibility, obviously, a big thing a lot of companies are facing. What are your comments?
Yeah, I want to go back to the 2 points that was mentioned at the beginning by Matt and Wei, probably is the cloud and the security. Let's start with those because I think the multiple data sources, what Praveen was mentioning, as well as Ram, that has been a challenge. Every day there's a new data source coming. But if you think about the cloud, what I'm seeing, and I meet probably 3 to 4 customers on a weekly basis, right? And Most of the requests that we're getting nowadays is, I have a bunch of data scientists. They are very happy using the cloud. They are very happy using the cloud tools, but the problem is they are copying the data everywhere, and we cannot keep the governance of the data. That is literally the first thing that I hear when I meet the customers before they even said I want to cut cost, because their problem is they're sleeping at night, being afraid of waking up tomorrow. And you know, the data scientist is not under the radar here. If something happens to the data, it's always the IT guy, it's the data engineers that gets exposed, right? The data scientist says, I was doing my job. And that's why the data engineer is usually like, help me protect this data, right? I don't want these guys. So, you know, historically we were saying, oh, why we're not doing on premises? But then his reaction is, but I don't have this flexibility of, you know, turning on a platform in 5 minutes in the cloud, right? If I need to do that on premises, I need GPUs, I need to buy them, I need to put some different infrastructure, etc. So what we started saying is, okay, let's help you, right? Where is the major problem? The major problem is where the data sits. It's not the tools itself. The major problem is where the data sits. Where do they need it? When do they need it? And how you make this available to them, right? First off, obviously, you need to put regulations within your company telling them you cannot copy the data as you do it for your own personal data. This is not possible here. So then they will tell us, okay, if we do this, then they'll ask us what are the tools available to do, you know, if I need my data in the cloud today, what can I do? So, you know, rather than promoting NetApp here, I'm just going to say there are a lot of tools out there that now help you move the data in between, help you fix the governance for that data. And that's why we added this layer within the cloud. If it is in the native cloud storage, it is very easy to put it in there, very easy, but very hard to get it out.
Yeah.
And very hard to maintain the compliance because you don't have visibility. If it's staying in pockets within the cloud, you don't know where your data exists. Whereas if you have that layer, it could be a data warehouse layer, it could be a native, you know, NetApp storage layer, or it could be something else. And that eventually fixes what Praveen was saying, right? How do I get visibility on my data? So again, getting from the simplest problem of copying the data across everywhere, we start managing that. We put them into a structure. We give them the tools to tell them, okay, if you want to move a terabyte, a gigabyte of data, use this tool to move it. We tested it. We certified it. We verified it. And Matt, I'm seeing this in the financial services a million times. Like financial data, very important. Google comes and tells you, hey, use this tool. It can give you a 360-degree view of your customer. Okay, data scientist likes it. Let's copy 30 years of mortgage data into the cloud. Wait, you can't do that. Yeah, you can't do that. So, you know, I think the first step to fix this is to figure out what's your hybrid cloud strategy, multi-cloud strategy on the data level. Because, you know, from a compute layer, you can turn off and turn on the containers very easily. The data is where the problem exists. So I'm not going to go into the solution today because it takes time to see what, you know, but I'm going to tell you that there is a solution today that governs the data movements across the on-premises to the cloud and across the multi-clouds as well. Because you'll figure out that there's also data sitting in AWS. Wait, but our cloud strategy is to go to Google. You know, oh, we like the tool that AWS was giving. They have better models and all that, right? It will be the same for you in the healthcare environment, because healthcare is less cloud versus on-premises nowadays, because, you know, we're still seeing 99% of the healthcare customers using on-premises. But even on-premises data for you had a question on jumping topics on how can we do a better EMR, EHR systems, right? Unfortunately, today we're still seeing the tradition in the research side, like yourselves, people are opening up to new tools. People are opening up into tools like iRods, Flywheel, other technologies. The traditional provider side, they are still very incumbent on the EHR, EMR, right? They don't want to take the risk to move forward. They are very happy with even with the limitations of the EHR system out there. But I would say we have seen some trend of healthcare people moving into the data warehousing, right? Rather than the EHR and EMR systems.
Before we come over to you, Matt's had his hand up. So Matt, go ahead.
Yeah. So Joseb, you're speaking my language, and this is why I have data governance in my title, despite the fact that I'm an analytics guy, is because it's flattering for me to myself to say this, but the analytics guys trust me to get the governance of the data right so that they can do what they need to do without getting those late night phone calls, right? The analogy we use is a very Minnesotan analogy, and that is the data lake is great, but what you need is a lake house. You need a lake house with the data structured for you in such a way that it is secure. And it's a lake house, which means it has the rooms you're looking for. It has a dock so you can get in the lake, and it has the security so that you can wander around the beach and not worry about anybody else. And so we've really introduced the analogy of lake houses, and very, very few people have unfettered access to our data lake, but lots and lots of people have access to the lake houses. But I'm just basically in violent agreement with everything
Great.
that you're saying, because Joseb, it's hard. And I spend more time worrying about data governance than I actually do worrying about architecting and building lake houses, although both of those are my job.
Yeah.
I know Wei had a comment as well. And then I want to definitely hear from Seth because we have about 45 minutes left. So Wei, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to, I agree with what Jose said. Right now, I think more and more physicians are become, forward-looking. They think, the current healthcare, the current, how they are currently practicing medicine is not the right way. So that's why there are a few, startup companies in the Silicon Valley who, and they, they try to digitalize, primary care, and even define the future of of medicine. So and they, I think for those companies, they are not using EMR or the conventional EMR systems anymore. But for us, we are still in the transition. We still depend on the the conventional EMR system, but in the meantime, we add another layer to modernize the data analytics for healthcare data. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing that Way. Looking forward to coming to you a little bit more. Seth, though, we've heard some great challenges from security to governance to visibility. Love to kind of get your point of view on kind of what your company went through and where you are in your cloud journey.
I thought there was a great word that Wei used earlier that I've been hearing a lot recently, which is multi-omics, which is kind of this study about, can we look at not just the genome, but these other pieces of information, that come together, and then we combine it. From an AI perspective, the algorithms are usually the strongest when they combine very different pieces of information. And so I've seen this trend with one of our customers doing multi-omics in particular, and they're combining it with, of all things, human motion data. Like a guy wears a sensor and he walks around and kind of look at his back and go, well, does that make sense? And then you look at the gene markers and we're not sure which ones matter yet. And so the fascinating part that this involves is the combination of two types of data that are wildly different. And also there is an EMR component in that customer because they have surgeons involved, as well. And so now there's three different types. There's unstructured data that shows up in literally CSV files. There's the genetics information, and then there's the EMR information and voice notes. And so what you see here a lot of times is the data lake is having to grow in a way that it has to take on a really, really unstructured approach, even more unstructured than we would have used the term for, right? Where it's like, heck, some of these are databases. So it's like, is this, is this an NFS question? Is this, what are we looking for? Is this a block thing? How do we do this and how do we manage it? So I found a lot of challenges tend to emerge there. And so the goal has to be, in my mind, to find a cohesive data strategy for managing it that covers both block and file because of that, with metadata, so that you really understand what you're doing. I think the lake house analogy could be a great way to point at that. But certainly if I wanted to point to a trend, it's that we're seeing a lot of hybrid data come together that's quite challenging for people to manage because it's so different, because the stakeholders are different, the uploads are different, security is different. So that's one thing. And then I would also say that what I've seen a lot of recently is, and maybe this is something nobody else is going to bring up, but the cost of the data lake per person. So we're starting to get executives at higher levels that are looking at this and kind of going, you know, is this a profit center or is this a cost center? You know, we have this massive data lake that we're standing up, and we'll delete data when again? Never. Okay, got it. So never. So this piece of data is going to cost me a lot of money no matter what. And that's interesting, you know. And where does it go from there? Like, how do I decide if this data is making me money? We always go, well, there's the future, don't worry. And it reminded me of an amazing conversation I'd had at all places MySpace back in that day with the CTO of that company, Aber Whitcomb. And I'd made this comment like, when are you just going to delete all the junk nobody cares about? And he said, well, the way that it works in these big data lakes for us is that we see that almost all of the content is accessed just a little bit continually, just enough that you couldn't delete it or tier it, right? And then there's this, you know, massive spike around the hot stuff. We've seen the same thing in data lakes over and over again. You know, the data has value across the entire spectrum in a way that you can't say, yeah, we should delete that or we shouldn't keep it. And it drives all of the costs, no matter where the hot spot is. So we try and think about how do we manage the cost of this data? Because I think if you can't lower the cost to hold, process, work with, and analyze in the future of each individual subject, for lack of a better word, or, you know, little area it could be a patient, it could be a person, you know, for Experian, of course, right? But, you know, whatever this is, if we can't figure out how do we control that cost, we're doomed. Yeah. So that kind of cost management seems to really come back into this question of metadata again, and how do I access this data lake? Because, you know, when the guy comes up with the next algorithm you're thinking about, and how do I approach it, what could be the features that I look for, they do need all that data, and it could have a lot of value. But they can't just like pull back the tape. You know, like, yeah, we put that on tape, we'll get it someday, right? I mean, there has to be a way to really engage with that data lake as time goes on.
100%. No, thanks, Seth. Wei, we'll come to you in just a second. I want to bring Ned into the conversation here, kind of how Evotech is dealing with these issues. Ned, I also like how you put in the chat, obviously we're talking about, it can be complicated, your journey to cloud, when, you know, there are regulations. So I'd love for you to touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, it's this particular area is very much top of mind. We work with a lot of very large customers, and there's sort of good news and bad news around these topics. The good news is that there are fantastically robust tools that allow us to capture data and move data around and duplicate data and have efficient copying and efficient moving. But it's not always clear to me that that's the right thing to do. And I don't remember who brought it up, but someone brought up, I think it was Wei, that there are almost an infinity of regulations around PII data or PHI data or whatever it is. And as you start thinking about, boy, it'd be really cool if I could move this into the cloud, whatever the cloud means in that conversation, then all of a sudden you've lost control of, or probably lost control of where that data physically lives. And maybe you've introduced a new jurisdiction's regulation around privacy into your mix or something like that. Talk about an unintended consequence if you weren't thinking about doing that. The other thing that we think about a lot, so regulations and compliance are very much top of mind when we talk to customers about their architecture, their governance, and everything else, because it's actually probably a bigger issue than the technology. I feel like we've solved the tooling problem. We now can do it. Now we need to ask if we should. That's number one. And the other piece that we think about a lot that this ability also introduces, and we haven't really talked about it so much yet today, is the idea of resiliency. So now I've got this concept of when we design a data center for whatever the workload is, we think about failure domains, we think about uptime, we think about performance. What are we doing? And when you start introducing moving data around to lots of other places, then you lose control of that too. So how do you set the business expectations about SLAs? How do you know that you've got correct separation if you need to have protected copies of that data? Are those protected copies in a place where the regulation is not an issue? So I was sort of reflecting on all those engagements when I was listening to these discussions, because on the one hand, we're talking about data management for big data or data science, but on the other hand, it's exactly the same as the rest of the issues that face enterprises. So yeah, love this topic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Wei, feel free to weigh on in.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment to what said about the cost. This resonates with me a lot. When a client comes to us, we every time when a client comes to us, we collect 150 gigabytes of data, right? Well, that's just for one. If you like say, we want to do like longitudinal analysis, which means we want to manage your house over the years, right? 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20 years, right? Which means, for each person, we will have, terabytes of data on that person. And the cost itself, it's very significant. How to reduce the cost? Is the client will pay willing to pay for that, right? We used to charge our, this is not confidential anymore. We used to charge, but you cannot do that for large, a population.
Wei, I think you're losing connection, dropping in and out. But we'll come back to you in a little bit. And since I want to be mindful of time, this has been a great subject. Let's talk a little bit more about data management and the challenges you guys have when it comes to automating those manual tasks of data management. What challenges are you facing when it comes to your AI initiatives? Let's bring Praveen back into the conversation. Interested for you to dive in first.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kristina. I think, see, from a data management perspective, in traditional world, what we used to do is we need to have 3-tier approach. One is the ingestion data, the second one is the transform data, and the third one is the output data, right? So we are maintaining 3 copies of the same data in the data lake. Yes, data storage is less expensive, but still having 3 redundant copies sometimes doesn't make sense. And even everybody wants a copy of their final copy, right? So they don't want to work off of any data services concept yet. That was in the past. So now there are a couple of solutions that we are thinking about. One is the data bricks. The data bricks, which is one of the technologies we use for earlier it used to be used by data scientists to explore the data, visualize the data. Now we are looking at SQL interface also, where we could use the same data lake within the data without moving the data. Can we read SQL directly, right? So in that way, we are not making one more copy of it. So that's one advantage, and it's also addressing the aspect of how do we use the data in the data lake, not for advanced analytics, but also for operational analytics, right? If you're thinking about streaming the data live into the data lake, so that can become your warehouse, that can become your ODS, that you don't need a online system or a transaction system for your operational data, then a data warehouse for a consolidated view, then a data lake. That's been in the past. So now we are cutting the chase and taking completely the data warehouse concept out of the situation, and then repurposing the lake for multiple things, right? So that's one school of thought. The other school of thought is we're also looking at technologies like Snowflake kind of platforms to see can it be a subset of data to manage the data much faster than everybody going towards the data lake, right? So couple of pattern shifts from where we have been in the past to where we are right now, or where we are going forward. And most importantly, the fundamental guiding principle is how do we repurpose the data without adding multiple copies? That's number one. The second aspect is, how do we reduce the IO? Because if you look at the whole equation of data analytics or AI and everything, the biggest cost point is the IO. Okay, because you want to read the data from somewhere and then take it out and use it. That's where we are getting burnt. So if we have the data already loaded in one place and we can use analytics on that, whether you're doing advanced analytics or operational analytics or querying the data or write data, inquire data services on the top, I think that is where the nirvana we are going towards.
Very smart. No, thanks for sharing that, Praveen. Wei, I think we have you back, so I want to throw it back on over to you. And also, take us through the challenges you have when it comes to automating those manual tasks of data management.
Yeah, so automation, it's so we have spent a lot of efforts to digitalize the data, the data that comes out from the EMR system. We have PDF version of LabCorp data, imaging reports. How can we we build a pipeline to automatically extract the information out of this electronic medical records, and then put them into Snowflake and provide some analytics. But still, a lot of things, right now is still not totally automated. We are looking for pipeline platforms that can not only aggregate data from different sources, but also can automatically generate high quality or extract high quality of information out of this out of these electronic medical records. And we're just getting started, to be honest. Yeah, that's all I have. Yeah.
It's interesting to hear you're just getting started. And Seth, you said you kind of are the expert on this. You've been through a lot of these data management challenges and manual task challenges. So interested to kind of get your point of view, how you kind of got through these challenges, and any advice you have for Wei, who's just beginning his journey.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, that there's two automation challenges here. The very first one is just, how do we ingest data from all these disparate sources and then give it something of a life cycle, and add metadata. And that's a tough one. It really does start with like some sort of ingest tool. There's obviously a few ones. We've mentioned Snowflake here, of course, but there's a few different ways to kind of ETL these loads together. But what I've discovered in my own customer base is that quickly develops into the real problem nobody got together on, which was data labeling. From an AI perspective, there's an interesting thing that everybody on this call has in common right now, which is that among you possess some of the largest data lakes of either labeled or possibly labelable data for developing AI models. And many of the AI technologies that exist out there literally perform better with more data, period. Like, this is a big debate in artificial intelligence that people argued about for a long time. But the question was, do you have a better algorithm or more training data, which generates a better response? And even the guy who invented neural networks stepped out, hinted, and he said, I want to say that I don't care about algorithms anymore. I only care about training data. Because it turns out that if you take a mediocre algorithm and you feed it 10 times the data, if you can get 10 times the data, which most people can't, but all of you can, then all of a sudden it has this much better result. And so the game then becomes in labeling the data and obtaining that. And I've seen a lot of challenges there. Part of it's like, do you have a human involved? There's a bunch of companies out there. Allegiance springs to mind, that do this as a service, labeling as a service. And so I think that as kind of IT practitioners, our challenge may be to take that beyond the standard images, like, yeah, that's a man and that's an orange and that's a car, and move that into like, look, here's our labels for data. This is how we'd like our data labeled. And then that leads right into automation, because the interesting thing that I'm seeing here, and I'm going to pull back an AI curtain for a minute. It's not really well understood outside of some of these AI circles, but in essence, when you automate, when you have a person who helps label data, you're training an automation system in the background. And we don't like to talk about that much. AI companies don't like to talk about that, but that's what they're doing. So you build a software interface custom for the user. Usually the user has enough money to, oh, well, this is what you want. Okay, well, here's how we're going to do it. And in the background is the person's labeling that data. You're training an automation system to replace your own guy. And your first and highest priority is just that it takes your dude like 2 minutes to label this type of data. And if it was like pre-selecting information, it would only take like a minute, and then maybe only 30 seconds. And then maybe you don't have that guy no more. And so there's really I'm just talking about artificial intelligence here, but there is an amazing trend towards the idea of, let's get humans involved. Let's monitor what the humans are doing. Let's get rid of the humans in labeling these data sets and then getting that metadata out. I think that impacts us everywhere, because we're using humans to train automation and tasks that we wouldn't have thought we were doing it. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it.
Thanks so much, Seth. Matt, I want you to weigh in. Seth, I might pick on your brain a little bit, but Matt, would love to bring you in. What challenges are you facing when it comes to your AI initiatives?
Our AI initiatives are more on the product side, and I'm more on the enterprise side. Our initiatives are around, but it's the same problem that Seth is describing. Tell us how you look at this data, train us on how you label this data, automate the training on how you label this data, make the person who labels the data redundant. It's the same thing, whether it's an AI initiative or a finance reporting initiative or a finance standardization initiative. I myself have worked myself out of more than one job of building out data expertise to the point where they're like, why do we have the expensive guy running this when the thing runs on its own? So it's not unique to AI, and it's not unique to what we're doing here. It's, can we apply the category theory to what we are doing so that what we are doing gets smart enough that it can run on its own?
Ramendra, let's bring you on in. What about, your challenges when it comes to automating those manual tasks of data management? You're on mute.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the biggest challenge, what I see is the data disparity, and that leads to more and more manual processes. When you talk about these manual processes, that one of the biggest challenge is that there is no standard. Sometimes I'm talking in general, because people have established somewhat like, okay, let me prepare data this way because this is easy for me, myself. My colleague might be working on Excel, I might be working on Google spreadsheets. So that itself, that's like a snowball effect, which has been in most of the companies. I'm giving a very small, crude example, but this is the type of easy and like isolated baked solutions are there in the places. And when we come to cloud, the common perception is that, oh, we can reduce the cost. But cloud is not about reducing the cost. It is more of a data management and security and privacy while doing a lot of things so that you can minimize this manual processes, so that I can get the single source of truth. That means bringing the data sets so that I am not going and manually checking what data I'm getting. I'm not going to ask 10 different people how this data was collected and so on and so forth. So these are the very grassroots level challenges you face. Doesn't matter whatever technology you are using. So, and how we are addressing this. And as I mentioned previously, that data preparation. which is a very fundamental. If you can take care of that, what is my single source of truth, where I'm collecting the data itself, that itself takes care of the downstream lot of challenges and issues itself. That is one aspect of it. That means you prepare the data and collect it and make it make sure that you are making keeping the data in such a way that anybody can take it and the single source of truth is taken care while minimizing the movement of it. That's what the goal of Teradata. That's what we are doing it. And the second part of it is that okay, and I mentioned that some of the panel members mentioned that okay, we have this operational data and this analytic data and data ingestion and so on and so forth. There's so many different copies. First of all, why we need so many different copies? Yes, it might be easy for me to say like why we need these copies. Different business, they need different sources of the copies for their different purposes. If we have, I'm going back to the single source of truth. If we prepare the data at the root level itself, when you're collecting the data from different sources and make it like a standard, like this is the format, this is not in the format, but also in terms of collecting the data. And let's say I did the data for preparation for certain set of modeling. I did that and I got the results. These results I might be storing in a flat file. But that means somebody else has to go back and again pull the data and do different type of modeling, and she will get another flat file or something like that. Why we can't reuse that? So that is another purpose. That means okay, let me do some analytics, and even the results by default they should be stored or managed in such a way that is also, even if not 100% truth, at least for that component of analytics that is truth. That means somebody can reuse it, taking the results itself instead of trying to get the data and doing some partially some other things, which gives a like multiplying effect of this 80% and 20% rule. And that means I'm minimizing that just by taking care of it at a very say like initially where the data is fresh or it has come out. And I am taking care of it at a very infancy stage.
Great. Thanks so much, Ramendra. I just want to be mindful of time. We have less than 30 minutes left. Wei, I know you wanted to mention one more thing on your end about your AI initiatives. Let's do that. And then I have one more question for Seth before we move on.
Okay, I will be quick. So for AI initiatives, we are doing basically preventative medicine. So which means, we want to evaluate how healthy a person is, which is, is a very challenging for us AI initiative, right? So, but, the way that we do is we work with our own physicians, like 7 of them in the San Diego area, actually. And in the meantime, we work with, this top specialists from Harvard Medical School, Massachusetts General Hospital. So look at the genome data, the imaging data, and the other phenotypic data, and then they identify, for example, the risks for your longevity, for your health. So, and then in the meantime, and also provide the recommended interventions, right? So this is like the training data for us, right? So for our data science team is working very closely with physicians, bioinformaticians, and together to train this model, which is which is fascinating to me. Yeah. Anyway, just want to add that.
No, 100%. That is fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. And Seth, I kind of wanted to just pick your brain a little bit on, what about iterating models and the management of that?
I'd like to share some bad news with the group. There is not any good model management software out there. And there have been times where I have literally been in meetings at a place like Microsoft, which has great model management software that they do not share with the public. And you can see them using it in the background, like, yeah, so here's every version of this model, and here's the taxonomy, and this is how we like went through this. And you're going like, whoa, what is that, Microsoft Model Management Studio 3? Or what is that? Like, no, we had to write this for ourselves because this doesn't exist. And so every big company I've ever worked with in the past, at least 3 to 5 years, has desperately wanted a piece of software that enables them to have all their models, to have a set of training data that's like always the same so that they can iterate and tell and see what the versions are in success and have like a scoreboard. They've all dreamed about using TensorFlow's little scoreboard. It never works. And they've all failed. And what they've had to do is to say, well, look, we're going to put some guys on this with some Python and some web training and build our own internal thing. So if you feel like, you're going to find that, piece of software out there, commercial software, you're not. I'm sorry. You're going to have to write it yourself. The thing that's intriguing about this to me is that once you make that decision, it's actually kind of relieving, because now you can lean into the storage platforms and the IT more, right? You want to use the APIs available so that when somebody has a web interface and they're like, well, let's go down this algorithm pathway and this training data pathway, you want them to be able to kick off a job, and you want the storage to move that training data over to an accessible local repository where they can get the maximum possible performance for it. This is a really big deal with GPU driven development, especially. You have to have unbelievable performance from the storage right here, right now. But if you have a data lake, the key here is that you don't need the data lake to be that fast. You need the thing that you want to be that fast. And so what I've observed, I spent a fair amount of time, this is a mea culpa thing. I spent a fair amount of time looking at things like the NVIDIA DGX arrays and going like, man, who would ever spend that money? I got a budget, we all got budgets, but whoa, what are you doing? And what I learned over time was that there was a real benefit to what I call calendar time. So when you basically build these really high speed lake houses, for lack of a better term, because that's actually a damn good one. When they're in the lake house, that thing better be instant in every possible way. And if it is, what ends up happening is that when these guys are busy experimenting with algorithms, just playing around, not really sure, they're fumbling in the dark, they can iterate through each test and run so much faster that what it does is it compresses the calendar time it takes. And so what those DGX arrays were really pushing on first was simply the overnight nature of being able to try something new, build a new training model, go home, and it'll be there in the morning, as opposed to 2 days from now. So it's not even the 2 days. It's like, is it there in the morning when you show up to work, or is it midday the next day? The calendar thing really snowballs with this stuff. And so for me personally, I don't work for NetApp. I'm not here necessarily to make the NetApp case, but that was a really big help for me, because the snap and replicate gave me a way to say, here's a piece of data, let me make 4 copies of it in 4 places, and then bring it back together and have really, especially with the snap lock ability, the ability to lock in a snapshot and say this training data and this model, especially for compliance purposes on the FDA side, to say this is exactly how it was run. And we're going to move this little thing over here, and it's only going to take up the differences in the blocks. And so that meant that we could make 10 copies of the data, and it would take up exactly 1.1 copies worth of space because of deduplication. And so I kind of learned to do something that I want to kind of point to. This is, let's not have too many duplicates. I wrote down a note here to myself, because one of the things I discovered is that sometimes it's really cool to just make a lot of duplicates, because what you end up with is like this proliferation of data, but if it's on a deduplicated storage system, it doesn't actually take up more space. It just gives people, processes, and servers ways to isolate that data and work against their copy, clone it and so forth. So again, I don't work for NetApp, but that was a big part of it for me, was being able to combine Python and web-driven interface, anything in Node.js especially,
Thanks
and
for
then
sharing.
just write that a little bit.
Yeah, post up, feel free to weigh in.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, back to Seth's point on the GPUs, I would definitely ask Wei, or even, have you guys looked at doing genomics on GPUs or not yet?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay, so I think
Yeah.
that's a conversation that we definitely need to have. Probably not on this one. I don't sell GPUs, but I just want to make sure that you are using the best out of the market out there. It's really reducing the time to, I have multiple customers using, doing genome, all of sequencing on the GPUs, and they're cutting, as Seth said, it's cutting down the calendar time. So we can discuss that, and there's like a very good software called Parabricks as well. If you haven't looked at it, that NVIDIA acquired for some time now, they are helping the genomics space. So we can definitely talk about that. But I want to ask Matt and see, Matt, do you have a Hadoop in-house?
Yes, we do. We're an Oracle shop, so we have Oracle branded Hadoop, and both on-premise and in the cloud.
Okay, and whenever that renewal comes, do you guys always start looking at what is different than this, but you end up extending the license?
In a word, yes.
Okay, so so I just want to also mention that as well. I don't know, Wei, if you have a Hadoop architecture or not. What we are doing also from that perspective is we are shifting into a modernized Hadoop architectures. I've seen a lot of modernized data lakes or lake houses in the Excel sheet that you guys filled out, the questionnaire. So yes, we are actually, not saying that you're gonna shut down Hadoop overnight and bring it something new or different this next day. But this is what's going on. The trend nowadays in the market is shifting into a container serverless architectures. We've done that internally at NetApp. As you guys can imagine, we have millions of devices out there in the world that we collect telemetrics. And it could be telemetrics, it could be customer data, it could be way you said you guys. So you have 150 gigabyte per person coming into your facilities. And I'm imagining you probably have 100 per day maybe, and then 700 per week. Is that correct estimation?
Well, each person, one visit is just one visit.
Yeah, so what's
150.
like number of visits per week? Can we say like thousands?
Well, that's what we're trying to get to.
Okay.
Yeah, not yet.
So
Yeah, not yet.
what I'm trying to say here is those are endpoints that we all need to collect them at a good place.
Yeah.
And what we're doing nowadays is we are shifting into this serverless architectures that is more flexible. You don't need 3 copies of the data. Historically, we used to do 3 copies of everything we're storing on the lakes. You don't need that. And today, you can spin up services in a faster fashion when you are doing it on a containers, the serverless architectures. You will need to do an extra effort at the beginning to write the code though, right? Don't get me wrong. And it's not gonna be overnight. If you don't have a Hadoop yet, it could be a good way to start off the lakes that way. If you have a Hadoop, it's gonna be a transition time where you start, okay, putting now new services on those new architectures. So I would like you guys to think about it. We're actually working with a couple of like ISV vendors out there, like Iguazio and others. If have a look at them, it's IGUAZ.io, and they are really leading this. They integrate with the old Hadoop tools, so you don't need to replace if you're using Hive, if you're using Spark, if you're using different previously Hadoop tools ecosystem. What we're doing is changing the base layer, right? Think about it moving from a full concrete house into a portable house, but you still have the kitchen, you still have the living room, but you can move that portable house. It's not concrete fixed and somewhere, right?
Thanks, Josep. And don't worry, we will connect all of you guys after this call to dive in deeper to all of that. But 15 minutes left. I'd love to get to one last question. And Matt, I'm going to start with you first. Multiple data sources obviously create multiple complexities. Want to know, is this something you guys are dealing with over at Experian? And how are you trying to unify that data lake and provide single access?
So yes, with the additional challenge that some of our systems are 40 years old and some of our systems are brand new and they have to talk to each other. If I had I would be wealthier than I am now if I was asked, well, why aren't we using an API to get at this system? Well, the system is 40 years old, kind of outdates the ability of doing an API. We use FTP for those of you who are graybeards like me. And so, yeah, that's what I struggle with every day. We talk about having a crumb that follows everything. Yeah, thank you, Ned. That follows the customer all the way through the journey from, hey, I'm interested in Experian, to, hey, I'm spending lots of money with Experian, and we're struggling even to do that. So you have basically hit on my one of my many number one problems.
I'm glad we hit on it. What about you, Ramendra? Is this a problem for you?
Yes. As I mentioned that, yes, definitely data from multiple sources integration is a big challenge. I see that particularly in our healthcare life sciences clients with data privacy security coming up as another big challenge, particularly in let's say right now with drug development and vaccine development for pandemics, what is like the COVID. So we have been working with some of those vaccine manufacturers. That is a challenge, and you might have noticed there's so many different articles coming in the Wall Street Journal how this became so much politicized in terms of the putting a coherent effort to get the vaccines. If imagine that what happens in within the company itself, that the similar challenges are even much more treacherous. It is because it is not because of the only political part of it, like okay, I prefer this vendor and versus that vendor. It is a lack of understanding that or lack of, let's say, put together that okay, the data was collected from different sources at different point and different time. How but somebody has to yield to make sure that his or her data has to be changed or manipulated. But everybody wants to just stick to their own guns that okay, I collected this data, my data is correct. So these are the challenges coming up. Again, I'm going back to what I was mentioning, particularly Teradata. We prepare, that's why we spend a lot of time to bring the AI analytics to the data preparation itself. That means the anomaly detection, data collections, and making sure the data streaming and data, they call it data munging. All these steps are which are very manually intensive, and also it affects the data integration. How the AI can enable AI can can be used within that to take care of anomalies or missing data sets, something like that, so that the data integration can be done more efficiently. So that is what we are doing right now, and starting with whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it is healthcare data sets, or even the drug manufacturers, some of the things that is like our goal right now.
Yeah, well, best of luck on that journey. Thanks for sharing that, Ramendra. Ned is having a great time in this chat. He obviously loves FTP. Ned, let's have you weigh in on these complexities.
Well, you know what I was sitting here thinking about while I was listening to these challenges is that they're effectively ubiquitous. And I wish I had a simple answer, but when we design systems for customers, you know, we see all kinds of requests. Like I've got a million wind turbines and I want to put IoT devices on them. And those IoT devices all produce data, but they might produce data in different formats, or they might have been produced at different times. And so we spend a lot of time figuring out how to capture the data and move the data and store the data. And then we seem like we drop it off on the data science group, and then they have to figure out how to rationalize all the data so they can actually do something with it. And I love the word that Rem used, which was munging, because I like that better than wrangling. But you know, I think that our very first project that was large, I think Seth was involved, and he brought up something, and he said, dude, excuse me, we're in California, so he called me dude. He said, dude, the biggest challenge that we're seeing here is that data wrangling is taking 95% of the time for this project, and we're not getting anything done because all the data is in different formats. And every time we introduce a new variable, we broaden that surface area. And so please help me solve this. And we sat down and, beat our heads against the wall for a while and just realized that we had to acknowledge it. And then, like everybody said, it ends up being a manual process, which produced a lot of dirty words. And so it's something that I wish there was an easier answer for, but we don't have any way of getting to commonality for the data sources. And that's something we see across every industry and every project, and not just around things that involve data scientists, but that's where it seems like it's the most exacerbated, because it does introduce time and lots of cost. So, and then as far as FTP goes, these old tools are not old, but these tools are foundational to how the internet works. And I'm perfectly happy to use FTP. We use it all the time. And that's why I was laughing at Matt. He pretended I didn't know what it was. So,
it's classic. And it is the tool that we use that works, as opposed to some of these other tools that don't. So no complaints. No complaints.
Thank you.
You just can't staple an API to it unless you write your own API for it.
Well, we have smart people in the world that can do all kinds of things, Matt.
Yeah, no, I got a team that does that, so that's good.
See?
Wei, what about you? Let's bring you on in. How are you trying to unify your data lake and provide single access?
Well, there are lots of things to talk about, actually. We consider us as a data-driven precision medicine, provider. Okay, so let me just give a simple example. How to measure the health of your brain. Okay, so we do. We look at your gene. Or whole genome, actually. If you carry, like, say, 2 copies of ApoE4 gene, then your chance of having like Alzheimer's disease, it will increase significantly. We also do brain MRI to check, like, say, how many white matters on your brain images, right? Or how big is your hippocampus is your hippocampus shrinking or not, right? So there are so many. So our framework, precision medicine framework, is all data driven. So Kristina, how can we measure, like, say, your health on a daily basis? We need to know for example, all your previous medical records, so that we know your entire medical history, right? And in the meantime, we need to know, like, say, your health records, health data on a daily basis. Like, say, how much sleep do you have every day, and how does your like, say, glucose, blood sugar change, every day, right? So aggregate the data from wearables is very, very important. It gives us, sometimes it's not the absolute value of a certain biomarker. It's the trend, how it changes over time. That's what it matters the most. So, which means we need to continuously monitor, how data changes, right? So, we get all your previous medical records, put them together. We aggregate, wearable data together, and then integrate them with the data that we collect by ourselves, right? Multi-omics data, imaging data, phenotypical data. Then have our own, like, we call it intelligent system to generate a very comprehensive picture and insights that most of our current physicians cannot see, because they don't have all the data put together. So we see some great example. So, for example, right now, the current, like, standard diagnosis for, like, prostate cancer, or monitor your status of prostate cancer, is PSA level, right? The biomarker. We have so many clients who have normal PSA level, but through imaging, we can see, there is a mass, clearly indicating prostate cancer, early stage. So, putting all this data together can tell you something that the conventional medicine cannot tell, which is very, very interesting. Yeah.
It's so interesting. I could listen to you talk about this all day, but I know we only have about 10 minutes left. So let's turn on over to you. Interested to kind of hear how NetApp is really helping customers with these complexities.
Yeah, so I don't want to sound that I'm selling it. I usually don't like that, especially on these roundtables. So, but I'll give you the brief on what I'm talking to customers, right? If they tell me their challenges. The number one challenge I mentioned is the data movement. We are basically providing a cloud-based solution, which is what we call it Cloud Volumes on Tap or Cloud Volume Services. You guys can all go and have a trial. You just need to go to cloud.netapp.com and you can get a 14 days trial. You can deploy it on the major hyperscalers. What that does is basically it provides this layer between the native storage and all the different cloud tools that you are using. Meaning your data will be sitting in a NetApp provided operating system, and then your on-premises will just talk to that cloud seamlessly, move the data. It will also give you better data protection. It will reduce the cost in some instances because we provide enterprise layer features within the cloud, like compression, dedupe, etc. So again, if you're running a big lake that has redundancy, it could come down, the data costs that come down. There's actually a TCO tool that you can use on that cloud.netapp.com. I would highly encourage you guys to just try it and test it. So we now managing the data movements across the on-premises and the cloud, also multi-cloud, because you can think about it as your iOS operating system sitting on a MacBook, sitting on an iPhone 5, iPhone 6, iPhone 12, different hardware, but still the iOS talks to each other. Right? Think about that. And that is what brings now the first part that I talked about. The second part is the Hadoop lake complexity and the cost. We are again moving more into an NFS-based, serverless, container-based architectures that reduces the cost, provides 50% more speed in terms of additional services, launching. That's the other piece that I'm helping customers with. The third piece, which I think Seth and Ned and even Ram touched base on, is the GPU accelerated workloads. So we are, we have done multiple reference architectures with NVIDIA GPUs as well as use cases. So, Matt, Wei, if you guys have any lack of use cases on how you can use AI, I am actually partnering with, here's the thing, they call me and I say, I'm not the use case guy because I can download use cases from Google. I can come, waste your time and my time and go away without anything. I am bringing a third-party PhDs that are, experienced in molecular science in your case, Wei, and PhDs out of MIT, sitting in Boston. And we are also bringing in PhDs in the financial services to tell you this is the use case and this is how we've done it. And then afterwards, we move into how you can use AI within your corporations. And with all the reference architectures we built with NVIDIA, then we come into the picture of the infrastructure. But for AI conversations, infrastructure is not leading it yet. It's more of the use case, and we can have that conversation with you as well, guys.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, meet the boss, just because I know we have 2 minutes left and I want to be mindful it's Friday and you guys are busy. Meet the boss will be in touch with all of you guys after to share the contact details, because I think you guys, this group should come back together again, converse. Matt, I know you really enjoyed a lot of this discussion, so I hope you keep in touch with everyone here, you as well, Ramendra and Wei and Seth. We'll also be in touch with you to see if you'd like to follow up with Joseb and Ned, and their teams over at NetApp and Evotech. So Ned, I'm going to pass it over to you one more time too for some closing comments before we say goodbye.
Hey, great. Thank you so much for your time, everybody, in discussion, first of all. And second of all, we talked a little bit about tools, and there's some good news around tools. There's a lot of sophisticated and amazing things that have been produced for data management. NetApp has produced some really killer things. We use them a lot. The other piece is we talked a lot about the things that aren't tool-based. And so need for architecture, the need to think about compliance, the need to take into account regulation, the need to be able to have a thoughtful plan around wrangling data. And what I try to counsel our customers all the time is that tools are never going to save you. You need to have a plan that incorporates tools. And so the tools are great and they become more sophisticated and easier to use every day. And that's a great delight because it reduces the amount of time that we have to spend fornicating around with them, if you know what I mean. But we do have to stop and think very carefully about all of the other issues in the compliance world, the regulatory world, and the resilience planning that are required are becoming more and more complex as the tools allow us to move things around even more and more. So that's where I'm spending almost all of my time these days. And it's utterly fascinating, but it's also terrifying, the spaghetti bowl of complexity that we've allowed to sort of percolate. So, let us know if we can help. Love to kick the ball around with you guys. Thank you again.
I like the spaghetti ball of complexity. A great way to end the roundtable. Happy Friday, guys. Have a great weekend. Thanks again for your 90 minutes and stay healthy and safe and have a great new year. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.